motivation doesn't actually lead to action, like we all think. Action leads to motivation. It's completely flipped. You want to write that novel? You don't need the perfect coffee shop, the right idea, and an expensive moleskin. Just write one sentence with a pen from the hotel on a Post-it note. Just doing that will tell you that you can do it, and then you'll want to do it. You want to run a marathon? Forget the good shoes, the right playlist, and the running buddy. Forget it. Just run to the stop sign in your dress shoes. By the time you do that, you're like, I can do that. And then you think you can do it, and then you'll want to do it. It's the exact opposite. It's the exact opposite. Don't just take it from me. You guys are scientists. You probably trust someone like Isaac Newton, you know. He's the greatest physicist of all time, after all. I mean, up there with Einstein. The guy discovered gravity, invented calculus. Pretty good resume. He'd probably be hired at Google these days. And he actually said in his first law of motion, I can remember like grade 10 science, an object in motion will remain in motion unless acted upon by an equal or greater force. Put another way, if you start doing it, if you place action first, you'll continue. It's harder to stop. It is easier to act yourself into a new way of thinking than to think yourself into a new way of acting. Our brains are often the enemy. How do you do it? How do you make your biggest fear into your biggest success? You just do it. You put action first. We all know Nike's slogan, just do it. What you probably don't know is that Nike was an $800 million company with low 20% market share when they came up with this slogan. Then they struck a nerve deep inside of us, something we all believe is true. You know what? On the heels of the slogan, $10 billion company, 50-60% market share. That's over the lifetime of using the slogan. We can remember the ad, they jazzed you up. You're like, I can do that, just get out there and do it. And it works. It works. And I think when you're authentic, you end up following your heart and you put yourself in places and situations and in conversations that you love and that you enjoy. You meet people that you like talking to. You go places you've dreamt about. And you end up following your heart and feeling very fulfilled. We're all going to get lumps and we're all going to get bumps. None of us can predict the future, but we do know one thing about it, and that's that it ain't going to go according to plan. We will all have high highs and big days and proud moments of smiles on graduation stages, father-daughter dances at weddings, and healthy babies screeching in the delivery room. But between those high highs, we may also have some lumps and some bumps too. It's sad, and it's not pleasant to talk about, but your husband might leave you, your girlfriend could cheat, your headaches might be more serious than you thought, or your dog could get hit by a car in the street. It's not a happy thought, but your kids could get mixed up in gangs or bad scenes. Your mom could get cancer. Your dad could get mean, and there are times in life when you will be tossed down the well too, with twists in your stomach and with holes in your heart. And when that bad news washes over you, and when that pain sponges and soaks in, I just really hope you feel like you've always got two choices. One, you can swirl and twirl in gloom and doom forever. Or two, you can grieve and then face the future with newly sober eyes. Having a great attitude is about choosing option number two, and choosing, no matter how difficult it is, no matter what pain hits you, choosing to move forward and move on and take baby steps into the future.
anyway, we had a guidance counselor at my high school who everybody was in love with, and he was awesome. He high-fived teenagers in the hallways, and he was one of those guys that everybody could approach, was accessible to everybody, you know, and we had mandatory retirement. Age 65, vamoosh. You were given the sort of like passage to pension. And we had this ceremony at the school. It was like the Mr. Holland's Opus, you know, ending. And the next week after that, he had a heart attack and died. And you know what, when I tell that story, you know the reaction I usually get? It's that, oh, and then it's also, you know, that happened to a brother-in-law of mine, or my grandfather also retired and then like he just wasn't the same. You hear that more often. So I looked into this concept of retirement. Here's 2 things I find out that are interesting. Number 1, Fortune magazine says the 2 most dangerous years of your life, physically, are the year you are born, and for mortality over the entire lifespan of the human race is 40%. Okay, that's kind of a big number. Better now, but 40%. And number 2, the year you retire. Okay, big deal. And then New York Times reports that incidences of depression spike 40% in that year you retire. So I start looking around the world at this concept of work and of leaving work and ceasing to work. And here's what I find. Dan Buettner and National Geographic did a study on the blue zones. Some of you may have heard of it. It's the places around the world where people live like way longer than we do. He studied a place called Okinawa in Japan, where they live on average 7 years longer than in North America. And guess what they call retirement? Nothing. They don't even have a word for retirement. Literally nothing in their language describes the concept of stopping work. Instead, they have a word, which I love, called ikigai. I-K-I-G-A-I, ikigai, which roughly translates as the reason you get out of bed in the morning, okay? What is your ikigai? So I gave my wife 2 little cards at Christmas last year. We put them on our bedside tables. She's an elementary school teacher at the TDSB. She writes, to educate leaders who make a difference in the world, okay? I write, finish writing this book, or, you know, to increase happiness inside organizations, or whatever I'm focusing on. But it gives you a bit of a direction.
Right.
It gives you a direction. And so I advise and I recommend you never retire. Plus, just to throw in there, retirement was invented, okay? It wasn't like we used to do this. We invented it in 1889 in Germany when Chancellor Otto von Bismarck just arbitrarily said, hey guys, retirement, age 65. And lifespan was 67. Now, we all want to retire earlier, and we live way longer. And so, those years can be vacuous, and they can be troublesome for all the reasons I mentioned. So I advise people to have an ikigai and to find work that includes the 4 S's: social fulfillment, the structure of getting out of bed in the morning, the stimulation of always learning new things, and the story of being part of something bigger than yourself, something you couldn't do by yourself. If you have those 4 S's, then you have what I call meaningful work. And I'm not advocating that someone about to punch out of 30 years in the meatpacking plant sort of punch in for 30 more years. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that we all have 168 hours in a week, okay? You have that many, I have that many, Justin Trudeau has that many, Mark Zuckerberg has that many, Warren Buffett has that many. The richest man in the world can't buy more time. It's the one thing that's not for sale. So if you take 168 hours in a week and you divide it by 3, you get 3 buckets of 56. 56, 56, and 56. If you are lucky enough to sleep 8 hours a night, and with 2 small children, I am not, but if you are, then that's 56 hours a week, okay? If you work 56 hours a week as whatever job you don't like, okay, that might be your middle bucket. However, I would still argue that those 2 buckets justify, create, and pay for your 3rd bucket, the whatever you want to do bucket. Is that where you volunteer? Is that where you're in the church group? Is that where you're doing something you love? And even when the meatpacking plant is over or the gig is done, then your bucket can expand and you can keep doing work. The definition of retirement I'm using is ceasing work completely, becoming idle, okay?
Yeah.
Many people who are like, I'm retirement, they're like, I love retirement. I volunteer at the hospital, I'm always down at the library, and that you're not retired, you're doing 100 things.
Right.
Okay? So that's what I'm saying.
Right.
It's like, keep finding things you love.